chesswebsite.com, and today we're going to be looking at the legal trap. And this is actually my favorite trap just because I see it more often than any other trap out there. So it starts out with pawn to e4, which I like just because this is kind of the opening that I usually start with. And black responds pawn to e5, very common. And white develops knight to f3, and black develops knight to c6, and then white's going to transpose into the Italian game with bishop to c4. And as you can probably tell, everything that we've done here so far is pretty common. You probably see it in almost all your games. And from here, black has a few options. He can go into the Giuoco piano, which is bishop to c5. You may see him develop his knight to f6. The trap actually comes about when he goes into the Philidor defense, which is pawn to d6. It's kind of a passive defense, but this is kind of what the trap comes from. From here, we're going to simply develop our knight to c3, and a lot of players that they just like to get their bishop out and pin down a knight to a queen anytime they can are going to come down as fast as they can and pin your knight down to the queen. From here, we are simply going to move pawn to h3, and most players, the best move for here is actually for bishop just to go ahead and capture on knight to f3, and we'll go over that in just a minute. But a lot of times black likes to keep the pressure on the pin, and so he's actually just going to move his bishop back to h5. And this is actually a mistake, is white's actually going to go up in material. Now how much material, we'll see, but from here we can go ahead and lay the trap, and that is knight takes e5. Now as you can see, this looks really tempting for black, as he can come in and take the queen. This is actually going to lose the game. If black does take the bait and capture on d1, then white can simply take on f7, check the king. He obviously cannot take this bishop because we have our knight here, and he can't move to d7 because our knight is here. His only move is e7, and we can come with our knight to d5 and checkmate. So obviously that is the trap. That's how they can fall into it. Let's go ahead and take a look at a few nuances that you'll want to take a look at. Back in this example, as you saw, we moved pawn to h3. And here's why. If we already move, because a lot of people say, well, why can't I just move knight to captures e5? Well, here's why. If we take on e5, yes, we do have a trap that if they capture on d1, then they will lose to checkmate after we capture just like before on f7 and then move to d5 with our knight. But black can simply, if he looks at the situation, he can actually just take on e5, and we've traded our knight for a pawn. We cannot recapture this bishop on g4 because his knight is now protecting it. Now, if you look at this example, after we move h3 and the bishop moves back, then once we take on e5, now if black takes on e5 with his knight, instead of falling for the trap, now we can easily take the bishop on h5, and the knight is no longer protecting it. So this small little h3 move is actually very important in this trap, because even if he moves back, we're still going to be up in material. From here, obviously a lot of times you'll just see knight to c4, but from here, white can just come to b5 with his queen, check, and we are forking the knight on c4, and we'll just take the knight on c4 on our next turn. And as you can see, we're up a pawn. So even if black does play the best move, after he moves his bishop back and we take, even if he makes the best move here of knight captures e5, we're still going to be up in material. And this is a big difference than if we try right away to capture on e5. Now, I know a lot of people have asked in other videos, well, how can black avoid this? Well, there's two ways black can avoid this. One is, if you ever do come across this trap as black, one, you can just capture right away on F3 and not even allow them to get the trap in. Or two, you can choose not to develop your bishop here. You can bring your knight to F6, or at the very beginning, just so you don't have to go into it, you can not play a very passive move like pawn to D6, and you can develop your bishop to C5, or you can just develop your knight into the game. So it's a very effective trap because you'll see it a lot. There's no obscure moves or anything. Everything's pretty straightforward, and it's very tempting for black to fall into the trap and capture the queen, and even if they don't, you're still going to be up in material. So hope you guys enjoy this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.